So, Moto G6, done. Moto G6 Plus, done. Moto G6 Play, well, today. So let's just get into that and let's take a look at how similar they all look. As you can see here, I want to mostly put focus on the comparison in terms of size with the G6, because as you can see, both 5.7-inch displays with 2x1, very similar dimensions in all aspects. And even though the G6 Play is a little bit thicker, which is actually not even that visible because of the bigger battery, it feels just about as good, because what I like is the high density and the very nice premium heft, even more so here on this one. And nice job. So you get a 4000 mAh battery in comparison to the 3000 mAh battery here, and the whole phone, yes, feels a little bit more chunky, but the usability is pretty much just about as good. So I definitely like that. Also the build quality, because it feels just as sturdy. Buttons have not quite the same high quality tactile feel, but the position is still good, which could be also said for the fingerprint reader, even though I'm not the biggest fan of that one's quality, because a lot of fingerprint readers allow this, a slide if you don't just hit it right the first time. This just does not. So you have to properly have it on and then it will unlock. But otherwise, let's turn it actually off. Otherwise it won't work. So as you can see, you can't just slide, you have to properly hit and you have to have it right, otherwise it doesn't work. And the screen turn on time isn't also the fastest one. So this is a little bit weaker than on some other phones. As you can see though, here in comparison to the Moto G6, the camera protrusion is noticeably smaller, obviously not the same cam, and this is also only just one lens. But the good things are still here in terms of design, like for example this nice little big curve that makes the device actually feel very nice and secure in hand. And yeah, reachability and everything is really nice. On the top then we have the headphone jack and the microphone on the left side this time, the dual SIM card tray with SD, and the, yep, you have seen it right, micro USB. So no USB Type-C, a bummer. Even for this price at this time, we should have this. And what we also don't have is a notification LED, because we have Moto Display, and for me this solution is absolutely fine, but I know many people need it. But instead of that, we rather got the front-facing flash that I think would have not been maybe needed. But since we don't have the fingerprint reader on the front, we also don't have the option to use that one for the navigation, so you will need on-screen buttons. And as you can actually already see, the bezels are okay for a phone of this price range. Obviously 2x1, and the bezels on the top and bottom haven't really gone smaller, but this phone overall still feels actually quite compact, especially more than the Plus, which felt a little bit overly big. So what else is there to say besides obviously the front being flat? If I didn't already say that, I would say let's go into the display. And we still have the color mode option, which is super nice to see, because we have standard and vibrant. Like I said already on the G6 Plus review, an even more vibrant solution for people who wanted even more so saturated would have been nice. But therefore we get color temperature control. And what you think that you have maybe already seen is a little bit more ray here, which is just noticeable because this is just the 720p display compared to the 1080p display on the G6. And you will notice that it's not quite as sharp or anything like that, but a high brightness. I measured 560, but I think something is wrong with my lux meter, because bright enough, but not that bright as it should be from that value. Other than that, viewing angles are stable, white point is already set very nicely, and colors on the vibrant mode are good. So overall quality of this display is really good. But let's not forget, it is just 720p, which will be good enough for everyone who just wants a solid working phone. But this is not a display that will impress, especially not compared to the G6. Now, speaker. Compared to the G6, there is one good thing about it and a bad thing. The good thing is the highs are just not as harsh and sharp as they were on the G6, but therefore it's also not as loud and even lower quality. So the speaker definitely could have been better, at least a little bit more rich and especially a little bit louder. With the front firing or the top firing system, it's good, but yep, that's it. Now the headphone jack is actually a little bit louder than it is on a G6 Plus, for example, but obviously you still have the Dolby Audio software, which you should enable because it helps actually here. But still, for an in-ear, good enough, but it is a little bit below average when it comes to volume. Quality though is absolutely fine, which leads me to the next point, which is also absolutely fine, the performance of the Snapdragon 430, because this is only pushing 720p, and then the 430 is absolutely capable, because as you can see, actually very nice and smooth. And yes, there is a little bit of a difference compared to something like a 630 or even the 450 in the G6 Plus or G6. which is just noticeable in terms of that it doesn't quite respond as fast and doesn't feel quite as fluid, but very lag free and very smooth in normal daily tasks. So when I used this over the past week, I never really felt held back because the device does what it needs to do in the speed you would expect it to do for this price range. Actually very, very consistent, very fluid, very lag free. So that's all I can say. Also, multitasking is actually fine. And I didn't really feel like it wouldn't have enough RAM. So all good in that aspect as well. Gaming obviously not quite on a proper mid-range level, but it is not that yet either. So let's get to the battery life. A full charge takes, I would expect, maybe like almost 2 hours. It actually supports quick charging and so on. So already I didn't really measure it just since I just didn't get the time to it. But what I got, and that is very impressive, and actually kind of what I expected, at least on general, but also at first not quite, because what I got on Wi-Fi was 10 hours. With a 4000 milliamp hour actually, I would have expected more, but where it fully delivered was mobile data with about 7.5 hours on average. And then it is better than the G6 and G6 Plus, so that's the major advantage this one has over them, with a very good standby drain, and overall also still 10 hours on Wi-Fi is good, because there the difference is a little bit smaller than on some other ones, but that is absolutely top. So let's get into the software, which obviously also once again is the same as on any Moto phone. So draw, here we have the quick settings, we have the stock Android look. No theming engine. In terms of Android, we have 8.0, and we don't really have many extra options. We have, of course, the Moto Suite that allows you to make the screen smaller, that allows for some gestures to turn on the flashlight, which I think should be on every phone. But other than that, you don't really get many extra options, which leads me to just say that the software delivers everything you want it to do. Maybe a little bit more, but not really much more, and that's fine. Now, in terms of updates, the thing is that the Moto G6 line was promised to get the next 2 versions, which is absolutely good. When you will get those is a little bit of a different thing, and let's just not forget this is the G6 Play, which is usually a thing that lower end phones don't get them quite as long, but I guess the G6, 6 Plus and Play are so close to each other, so all should have the same kind of option. So software of the camera I will skip, and we will jump straight into the pictures, into the selfie cam. And one thing that you maybe will already notice is that from this distance it's a little bit less sharp than some other ones at this range, and at this range even still as well, where it's usually already sharp on all phones. So a little bit further away and you are in the right focus, which just shows that the focus is a little bit kind of further back than on some other phones, which leads to from normal selfie distances to quite some, let's say, not super sharp photos, a little bit on the blurry side. But the quality on its own, colors look fine, of course, not as sharp and not as detailed and such, but yeah, it's a Play after all, so that's where you make the sacrifice. Obviously also inside, because it just doesn't pick up so much light. And the focus seems always a little bit out of it. But then again, yes, we have still the flashlight option. In case you need that, you have that. Now, something seems wrong here. Okay, outside. Keep one thing in mind, this is a $200 phone with the price being actually even smaller in maybe a few weeks and so on. So don't expect too great shots. For just normal use, for what it is, actually the pictures turned out fine, because the autofocus mostly worked out good. Not always, for some reason I couldn't get that into focus at all. And the qualities are okay. Yes, obviously others are sharper, maybe more accurate colors, and the better exposure, because as you can see here, sometimes it just completely blows out the back. So this is where it mostly shows that it's not a great, but with normal, not too bright and not too dark situations, it's fine. Absolutely. Yep. That's what you should expect. Of course, like I said, exposure, that's the main thing actually, because otherwise the sharpness and clarity and so on are on a totally fine level, as you can see here. Now low light, yeah, here you definitely notice it, that it's just noticeably more blurry and a little more grainy. Quality just doesn't deliver. That's where you just need a better cam, a better phone in case you want that, especially inside. Everything just feels slightly out of focus, just because it's not as sharp. Now video, since there is no 1080p 60, no 4K, we are stuck at 1080p 30. But so as you can see here, with actually quite good stabilization, which is fine. So you don't get the best video quality, but therefore nicely stabilized. Actually quite good, as you can see here. Yes, not perfectly stabilized, but it really does a nice job. It's just the quality overall that it's not that amazing, as you can see here. The autofocus isn't perfect. It jumps a little bit in between. But that is okay. So front-facing cam, also decent. Like I said, the focus isn't quite perfect, and that's why it seems always a little blurry and a little bit pixelated or artifacted. Yep. I mean, the cam is what it is. It's just not a free $400 phone, so you can't expect a dead camera. And inside also, one thing was noticeable, the sound was noticeably thinner than even on the G6 or G6 Plus, even though the quality itself was quite clean. And as you can already see here, we still have the flash, which I will turn on right now. And yep, in some situations, this might actually come in super handy. So let's already get to the rating and to my conclusion. And I have to say that this phone, obviously compared to the G6 and G6 Plus, seems to fall back, obviously. But what it has in terms of advantage is the noticeably better battery life, because what you get is about 1.5, if not even 2 hours more on mobile data. On Wi-Fi it's actually closer, so this is the main aspect for this phone. But it still is a very nice overall solid phone. Okay, there are some things, we just have to mention it. No micro USB, there is still no LED like on all the other ones though as well, but compared to the G6 series, it also just comes with the 720p display, and it is a little bit more chunky, and it's not quite as powerful. So you pretty much sacrifice everything a little bit compared to even the G6, but therefore get the better battery life. That's something that you have to decide. Personally, I would definitely go for the G6 because you pay $50 more, but everything is noticeably better, especially you jump to something more recent like a still future-proof 1080p display, 720p with micro USB, and all that is dated. But if you just, and especially if this phone, what I think it will come down in terms of price, fall to something closer to 100, 130 or something like that, and you just want a super reliable phone that does get all the job done, gets moderate updates, has decent cam and everything else, yes. But let's just not forget import phones and also the G6. So there are a lot of options there that just offer more for this price. So this kind of feels like the weaker sibling with the better battery life. So that's the main aspect. This is for someone who wants something reliable and doesn't want to really bother so much about the battery life. But you obviously make sacrifices, and that's where I'm actually going to leave it. So that's it. Until next time, bye.